Good morning. Welcome to Fulton Church. I am Dave Flood. This is Rosemary Williams standing next to me. We are live streaming a Sunday school for you this morning, and there will be some changes. So what we do this morning is going to be different than what happens in the following weeks. So I kind of want to walk you through how this is going to play itself out. And as long as this virus is going around, as long as we're behind the camera instead of face to face, this is the way we're going to do things. So as you notice in the PowerPoint, Sunday school next week for Rosemary and myself, the Worldview Sunday School only, will be Zoom. We will not be live streamed like we are right now. Pastor Bob will be sitting where we're sitting, but we will be we will be on the Zoom. So in order to do this, and here's where I need everybody's cooperation, we need your email address because I will have to invite you to the Zoom meetings that we are going to host. Rosemary will be on her computer, I'll be on my computer, we'll all be at our own places of residence, but we'll be come together on Zoom. I will send you a link in Zoom, which is going to help you to come to where we are so we see each other at the same time and have class together. The link to Zoom will allow us to discuss, and that's what's so cool about this. And we've done this with our CE meetings,
Yes.
and we've done this with other things, is you have questions, you can give the questions right there in live time, and then we can respond, and you can hear what other people say, and it's going to be a really good opportunity for us to feel like we're back in the classroom again. Anything you want to share about that?
No, only that in case anyone out there is feeling nervous about using Zoom, I will tell you that before Tuesday, I had never used it before, and then I needed it every day since then. And it was different groups each time, and it was really easy, and it's pretty intuitive, and that also no one's expecting perfection. So because of the platform that it is, we'll be able to help work out issues right there on the spot.
Exactly. Give you an idea, this is kind of what Zoom looks like. We can see everybody in the group, but the nice thing about Zoom is if you don't want to be seen, you don't have to be seen. You can still hear, you can still talk with us, we can still have interaction, but you actually don't have to have your face on the screen. So if you didn't wake up with a good look, that's okay. You'll be fine. But at the same time, we'd love to see you. We'd love to interact. And one thing about Zoom also, and we'll talk about this more next week as we start to walk through it, but the nice thing about Zoom is you can raise your hand. That is, there's a little button you press that raises your hand. So we're not trying to overtalk each other and talk at the same time, but we're actually able to have very meaningful dialogue. And that's really what we want during this time, is I want to hear what you have to say, because we're still dealing with worldview issues. Our Sunday school is about worldview, and so we want to make sure that the questions and comments you have, everybody gets to hear them and we get to interact with them together. So again, just to reiterate, I must invite you to join our Zoom meeting. It will be at 9:30. And you'll notice the church service is going to run very similar to how it used to run. Sunday school's at 9:30, worship is at 10:30. And now we have prayer at 8:30 in the morning before that. And so we're actually coming together maybe more than we ever have before. And this is just an incredible opportunity for us to continue to meet together. I need your help. Please contact me through email. I mean, if you need help, please contact me through email. And if I have to, I will go to your house and make sure you can get set up on Zoom. But if you know someone, a family member, or someone who can help you get hooked up, then that will be the best, so we don't have to continue to spread any type of virus situation. Next Sunday, Pastor Bob will live stream right where we're standing right now at 9:30. So this is the only time the Worldview Sunday School is going to actually be here. Otherwise, we will be on Zoom the weeks following. So Pastor Bob will be standing right here doing his Sunday school as he did before from this very location. As well, my wife, Tony Flood, will still do the high school Sunday school. She also will be on Zoom, and so she will need your address. And so email to her your email address so she can invite you to her meeting. And so the high school will still have Sunday school with Mrs. Flood. The Worldview will still have Sunday school with Dave and Rosemary. Pastor Bob will be standing right here live streaming Sunday school. And so church will pretty much be going on, not as normal, but you know what? Is the new normal anyways.
The new normal.
The new
That's
normal.
exactly right.
I will lead a Zoom class at 9:30. My email's on the screen, and I put it up there several times. We're actually going to close our Sunday school today with the same series of slides. So if you didn't get my email, dave@edgertonteencenter.com, you will see it enough times where you'll be able to get it. As I mentioned, our Sunday school schedule will be the same as it was when we were meeting face-to-face. 9:30 is Sunday school, 10:30 is worship service. So now we're into worldview. And Rosemary and I have been working on this. We actually started 2 weeks ago because we didn't have church or Sunday school last week. And so as we're working through, for you who are unaware, Rosemary and I are teaching a worldview Sunday school. And the worldview Sunday school deals with how does the world itself look at the world they live in. And when we talk about worldview, we started with the theistic worldview. The theistic worldview is pretty much the Christian worldview. That's what we capitalized on. But it's not distinctly Christian. Theism means we believe there's one God, and that includes Islam, and that includes Judaism. But we focused on Christianity because we'll spend a lot more time in Islam later on as a very separate worldview within theism. But as we look at worldviews, how does the world look? How do they identify, how do they describe, how do they define and make judgments of the world they live in? And they do that based upon presuppositions that we all have. Now, we started with theism, then we went to deism, and we're not going to reiterate all that right now. Then we went to naturalism, and now we're in nihilism. But what you will find is all these worldviews kind of telescope out of one another. And nihilism is a natural result of naturalism. Because if you have a closed system where there is no God, there is no spiritual dimension, you end up with despair and hopelessness because everything depends on you and me. So nihilism is the denial of worldviews. In fact, James Sire, the book we're going through, The Universe Next Door, describes it as it's not really a worldview, but rather a denial of all worldviews. In fact, it is a denial of actual knowing. In fact, nihilism is the denial of any possible knowledge at all. It's a negation of knowledge of ethics, beauty, reality. There are no absolutes because how do you even know what is true in a closed system where everything depends upon your rational processes? You're a human being with a brain, and all it is a computer. And so whatever goes in that computer determines what comes out of that computer. And if it's totally void of anything spiritual, what's left? Why don't you take over this, Rose?
Nihilism did not result from theists and deists picking apart the naturalist worldview. It is a natural child of the naturalist worldview, which is what you were just talking about.
Right.
When we talk about naturalism, essentially atheism, leaving God out, a lot of people will stay there.
Right.
They'll stay in naturalism because they feel comfortable there. They don't want to go to nihilism.
Right.
Because nihilism is, well, it's lonely and negative and pretty terrible. But whether they want to go there or not, that is when you absent God from everything, that is what you're left with. And if they're honest, that's where they'll go.
Right. And you'll find that most don't want to be honest because that is a reality nobody wants to face, a world where nothing is meaningful. Now, the necessity and change. When we look at nihilism is the natural outcome of a belief system where matter is eternal, matter is all that exists. And in our Sunday school, we've had people ask, well, what do you mean by matter? Can you explain that, Rose?
To me, and we've talked about this, matter is the things that we can feel, we can touch, we can see, we know that are here, and probably some things that we don't yet, as we're able to discover things that are smaller and smaller and things that are bigger and bigger in space. But essentially, it's everything that's not spiritual. So nothing spiritual whatsoever.
Right. And when we talk about the second line, the cosmos operates within a cause and effect closed system, it means that the natural laws that have evolved from the Big Bang, or however they want to describe how things came into being, those natural laws are the only laws of the universe, and they determine everything. And if it's a closed system, that means why in the world would you pray? Because there's no God. There's no spiritual dimension. There's nothing outside of yourself that exists. And so in a closed system, you are all that is and all that matters and all that will ever be. So in this material world, everything we can feel, see, taste, touch, that our senses can somehow find, that's all there is. And if that's truly all there is, then we don't pray. Because who do we pray to? We don't expect a spiritual dimension of any type because no spiritual world exists. And if that's true, what happens when you die? What happens when your child is sick? What happens when your marriage is falling apart? How do you find hope, purpose, and meaning when everything depends on you and there's nothing else to look to? That's what happens in nihilism. And that's why nihilism is such a depressing, and again, we don't say worldview because it's the absence of worldviews.
I would add, though, too, that
Yes.
as depressing as it is, there are people who will see some attractiveness to it because it completely eliminates accountability.
Yes.
And so even though we know that we know because we're not nihilists, we know that we can know that there is something more. There is something appealing to the idea that we're not accountable, and we won't be held accountable. And that's the only reason I can think of that people will end up there.
And we'll actually kind of look at that a little bit more later on. If a person is the result of impersonal forces, which just haphazardly are working around in the universe, have no purpose, no meaning, no rhyme, no rhythm, that person has no way of knowing what he seems to know is illusion or is it truth. Now, this is important because this is a very important aspect of nihilism where if all we can gauge what we understand about the world is what happens within our computer brain, how do we know that's even true? How do we discern what is true and what is real? Because if we live in a closed universe, we have no external lawgiver giving purpose and meaning to what we believe. Therefore, everything is what we say we believe. But what if Rosemary says one thing and I believe another thing and you believe another thing? Well, then who gets to make that judgment call? And then if doubt is raised, is that even true? And she said, well, I don't even believe that that's true. So now we don't even know what truth is anymore. See, this is a natural outcome of nihilism, is it's the inability to actually know anything because you doubt everything else. In naturalism, knowledge is knowable, but by the abilities of the brain. And that's the only way it's knowable. So without matter, the brain, there is no thought. But matter functions by nature of its own. Charles Darwin wrote this. Rose?
The horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which has developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust the conviction of a monkey's mind if there are any convictions in such a mind?
Now, you see what Darwin is saying. You're just a monkey. You're an evolved monkey. Would you trust what a monkey is thinking? Well, of course you wouldn't, because he's just an animal. But in naturalism, and especially nihilism, taking it to the next conclusion, is the fact that we are just animals. And if we're just animals, and you wouldn't trust a monkey, why would you trust your own thoughts? Why would you trust the thought of your neighbor? Why would you trust the thought of your government or anybody else in your sphere of influence? Virtually no nihilist truly accepts the logical conclusions of nihilism. And Rosemary shared something this last week. You know, she's had an email or a Facebook banter with some people. Could you share just a little bit about that?
Oh, remind me of which one it was.
I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
That's
okay. It's not rehearsed. So, just so you made a statement about naturalism and how it has to be someone you might be related to, and they were offended that you would say that you had no basis for your belief.
Right. Oh, yes, there was. So someone had made a quote just talking about that thing, that as an atheist, that there was no basis for morals. And I just commented on that. I'm like, can you even imagine, I believe that was my comment, can you even imagine not having a basis? And I will tell you that people I love, responded poorly to that because they are atheists and they did not want to be told that there was no basis for their morals. In fact, they read that as very beyond negative. They felt like I was attacking them. That no one wants to believe that they don't. Well, atheists just don't want to be told. People who don't believe in God, who don't follow God, don't want to be told that there's no basis for their morals. But they aren't very quick to offer what their basis is. They'd just rather not be asked. That was my experience.
Yeah. It's easier just to not look over there and deal with that. And that's oftentimes the way Christians live as well. And so that's why, as we go through worldview, one thing I hope we really find out is that we're going to have trigger points. We realize, maybe I think like that too sometimes. And so when we look at worldviews, we're going to find out that our Christian worldview may, in fact, have pulled in parts of other worldviews that maybe we need to get rid of. And we're all in that boat because we all have presuppositions. We're all trained and raised up by our culture, and we don't always see when we're actually being deceived ourselves. But when we go through these, I think we'll have our eyes open to many more things.
I just want to add, too, though, that I don't want to generalize, though, to think that all atheists don't
Right.
want to be asked. There are definitely people who are willing to have civil discourse, and they'll talk about it, and they just will remain unconvinced.
Right.
And that is the truth. So it's not as if no one, the people in my particular family, they just didn't want to be asked. They were not interested in civil discourse. But there are people out there who are, and not everybody has a violent response to that.
If we cannot make real distinctions, how do we even exist? I mean, how do you go to the store? How do you get in your car and turn the key on? And how do you trust that person coming this way while you're going this way is not just going to cross the center line? And life in the ordinary world is based on our ability to make real distinctions, to make decisions that actually have to fall in line with logic and truth and morality and values. And so how do we get that? How do we even exist if we don't have some sort of a grid for truth and meaning? Rose, what's
Robert Capon, am I correct? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I believe so.
Okay. Describes it this way. The skeptic is never for real, telling you that you can't be sure of anything, not even of his own existence. And I'll give you my secret method of demolishing universal skepticism in 4 words. Your fly is open. This slide was way more effective when it didn't give the punchline first.
Yeah.
But it is definitely true. We all know something.
Right.
Because everyone will look. If the skeptic thinks knowledge is so impossible, why does he always look?
And that's true. When we created these slides, we created them to come out from one another, but it's true. I guarantee you, if you're any guy and if you're ready to do something presentable, and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, your fly is open," you are going to look down and you're going to find some place to go and adjust your zipper. Because you know what? We know this thing, we just know that we know. And to say that knowledge is not knowable, to say that knowledge is impossible to know, to say that we can't really understand or grasp anything truly, we just don't believe that. You know why we don't believe that? Because there's something within us that tells us there's something true. Genesis 2, man and woman were created in the image of God. Male and female, they were created. When God placed his image in humanity, he did something very remarkable, is that he made us kind of like him. And us having the image of God within us then makes us totally different than the animals. We are not just reasoning, mammals who walk along the world and have evolved to a certain position where now we have brains that work better than other species. God has placed his image within us. Therefore, we are all image bearers, which brings value and purpose and meaning to all life. But it also gives us the ability to say, hey, something is true. And some things are false. Some things are morally correct, and some things are morally false. Some things are valuable, and some things are invaluable. And there we might have subjectivity in what those are, but we know there is a moral lawgiver who has created moral law because we believe as Christians that we live in an open system. That is, God created this world, but he is out there, but he also interacts with us. So there's this going back and forth. So we do pray. We do share. We converse, we cry together, we pray together, we minister to one another because we believe there's something bigger than just our brain, holding us together and giving purpose and meaning to life. The problem is not that moral values are not recognized, but that they have no basis in nihilism. Now, all cultures across the world look at, every culture has some sort of moral code. Alan Bloom says, Rosemary?
Reason cannot establish values, and its belief that it can is the most pernicious illusion.
If we believe that my mind, this computer up here, can establish values for everybody, I'm under total illusion. I'm completely deceived. Because if I live in America in 20th century, I have one way of thinking that my culture has programmed me to think. If I live in Zimbabwe in the 20th century, they're living in a different type of culture, which programs them how they're going to think. If I lived 200 years ago, I lived in a different culture, and it programmed me how to think. We're so much presupposition that goes into making us and creating us and helping us to think. And we think we're being logical, but we're actually just being conditioned by our culture if, in fact, we're only natural people, if there's no spiritual dimension. So I think what Bloom says here is correct. Reason cannot establish values by itself. Values must come from without, because they can't always come from within. Because I can say, hey, Rosemary, this is what's important to me. And she can say, hey, this is what's important to me. And we may not agree. And so what do you do when you have two perhaps conflicting moral values butting heads? Who gets to determine what's right and what's wrong?
Right.
To the naturalist, the world merely is. What do I mean by that? No, this is all there is. So this is it. There's no need to look outside. This is the way it ought to be, because this is the way that it is. What do you think about that statement? And I'm asking you out there, what do you think about the statement that this is the way it is because this is the way it is, and we should look for no other way? Let's think about that for a second. And when we have our Zoom next week, we'll actually talk about stuff like this.
You'll be able to just either type or say those
Yeah.
very thoughts.
Yeah, you'll be able to type it or say it, either way. Do you have any thoughts on this?
You know what? I have read that sentence so many times, and it's probably not at all what you're going for, but no matter how many times I read it, all I think of is the emptiness that comes along with that idea that the world merely is. Like, I know it in my core, that that's just not true. And I think that most people do, to one degree or another. And in fact, that is why they are continually searching for meaning.
Yes.
And that is why they can't think themselves into values. But is that just, I don't know, it's just the most disheartening thing to think that this is all there is. And I'm grateful for faith, the gift of faith, and I'm grateful to know that there is more. That is what I think of every time.
Yeah. Well, amen. And as you know, next week we're going into existentialism. Why existentialism? Existentialism is if you take God out of the equation and you say it's only a natural process of natural laws in a closed system, you're left with yourself. And if you're only left with yourself and you have to determine meaning based upon the computer in your head, and that's all you have, nobody wants that. And so what they have done is they've created another system. As we said, these systems all flow out from one another. So existentialism is, how do I find meaning, hope, and purpose in a life that's meaningless, purposeless, and hopeless? And so we grasp for straws. We try to find it. So next week we'll be looking at existentialism because it's the natural outworking of a nihilistic perspective. I almost said nihilistic worldview, but I'm trying not to say that because it is actually not a worldview. It's the denial of any worldview. In contrast, which what Rosemary said, and which she articulated very well, the Christian knows the world is broken. We know this is not the way it's supposed to be. We know this is not all that there is. This is not the way. This is the way it is, but this is not the way it's going to remain, nor is it the way that it was meant to be. And that's the key. Because as Christians look at the world that we live in, we understand that this world is broken. It's not the way God made it, but it will become the way God wants it to be in His time.
And that's really that distinction too, right, between the is
Right.
and the ought.
Yes.
So the naturalist is left with the this is what it is, and the Christian knows that it ought to be different.
Amen. Sociologists and anthropologists have traveled the world for several hundred years now. And they've established that there's no tribe without taboos. Every culture has a code of values. And some of those values are marriage is something that happens in every culture. Murder, and we were talking about this week. Any other things? Remember some things we talked about?
Well, the idea that in every culture, maybe what they deem as murder might be different.
Right.
But every culture has an idea of what murder, that murder is wrong. So even if you go to a civilization, and I don't know how many cannibalistic civilizations there are anymore, but even those civilizations, as we've read about them in the past, would have had a standard within their society of who was okay to attack
Right.
and consume,
Right.
and who wasn't. So, so murder
Right.
seems to be pretty universal. Marriage, we know, every culture that we know of so far has some form of marriage, and the expectation of fidelity within that marriage.
Yes. And so every culture in the world has certain taboos. And that's our point, is that if nihilism is true, why do people have value systems at all in every culture in the world? And that's just, it doesn't disprove nihilism, but it's just one more nail in the coffin saying there's many errors and problems with this belief system. And these are some. But I want to look at now, as we move forward, is how in America our cultural values have shaped us. And you will find that some values are cultural, some are eternal, and we are in the quest to discover which ones are eternal and which ones are cultural, and make sure we keep the main one the main one. Moral values are relative to one's culture. So what does our culture value? Again, the relativism and autonomy up there was supposed to be hidden so that we could bring that out. But look at our world, and we were talking about this before. With the coronavirus, I have seen autonomy played out like I've never seen it played out before. You want to share an example?
Oh man, there are so many. So we love individualism, and we don't want to be told what to do. So the idea that we are being told to distance ourselves, that we are told to keep our gatherings to a certain, that we are told not to do any discretionary shopping or travel, and people are still like, you're not going to tell me what to do. I will tell you though, we know there will be a price to be paid for our autonomy right now. And I just saw, my sister Mary just shared with us a teacher in South Korea talking about having cases start to go up again because people are becoming lax and not following the rules, because people don't want to follow the rules. They don't want to be, and that's our culture. South Korea is probably very individualistic culture as well. We don't want to be told what to do.
No. You probably saw the pictures of the kids on spring break. College kids down in Florida. There's no distancing requirements in Florida at that time, at least right now. And what are they doing? The interviews, and they interviewed one person from Wisconsin, yay for Wisconsin, and they interviewed some people from other states. But the bottom line was, we want to party. This is our time. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want to be told that we can't party. This is our spring break. And on the flip side, I know older people who are saying, don't tell me what to do. They're still going out like there's nothing wrong. And they're saying, we have the youth and the old, and it's interesting right now, and this is a phenomenon that's only current right now. I don't know how much this will weigh out. But we have this 30-ish to 60-ish that says, yeah, we should probably distance ourselves so this doesn't spread to our older people, because we love our older people.
Right.
And they're the most vulnerable right now. But it's the extreme. It's the young and it's the old, which are the ones kind of blowing this off and wanting their autonomy to really shine. As Christians, we're not exempt from these same types of worldview issues and sins and preoccupations that I want it my way, when I want it, how I want it, and I want it my way now. And relativism is the other one that we discuss. Just that this world we live in does not want to make moral distinctions.
Right.
It wants things to be, you believe what you want, I'll believe what I want, let's just get along. The problem is what I believe will conflict with what you believe, and so we have to find a way to work through. But rather than work through the tension, we just say, no, believe what you want, and I'll believe what I want, we'll just go on our way. But that never works, because belief systems collide. What does our culture value? What does our culture not value that Christians must value? Now, at home, I want you to think about this. Take 60 seconds. What does our culture not value that we as Christians must value? And there's a pause intentionally.
Right.
I really want us to think about this.
was really looking forward to the discussion on this.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just, this definitely, I think, would generate some great thoughts. I hope that if you have thoughts during this class, that you will reach out to us in between now and next Sunday so that we can, we can talk about some of those things, the thoughts that you're having, that they're not just meaningless, that you're not just sitting there thinking of them, but that there is the hope that we will get together and have the opportunity to discuss them. But if you wanted to send them to us, Dave gave you his email address. A lot of you are my friends on Facebook. You could just message me. But I would love to know those things that you believe our culture does not value, that we as Christians must value. Because we know that there are.
Yes, absolutely.
We know there are definitely things that that our culture is out of sync with living for Jesus.
Right. Illustration of moral values. Now, follow along these next couple illustrations. We say what you mean. We'll tell you what we mean there. Moral values are relative to one's culture. You say, well, some of you are thinking, well, no, moral values are moral values. There's no culture for moral. It's moral or it's not. When you see something out at the curb with the garbage, in our culture in America, I guarantee you, if I put something out by my curb, by the garbage pails, on Wednesday morning to be picked up, it's garbage and it's free for anybody. And I do that continually. I used to do that all the time. I would put metal out there because people scrap and they want to pick up the bare metal. I just put metal out the curb and it was gone within 3 or 4 hours. Because that's money. It's money in people's pockets. They know they can scrap it.
You put it on Facebook Marketplace right now, it'll be gone in a half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. But you put something out there, people know it as garbage. But if that same bike is leaning against your garage, well, now it's not garbage.
Right.
You see, our culture places value on how close or distant it is from actually your property. In our culture, something on the curb is garbage.
It's not stealing it.
It's not stealing
That's not stealing.
And that's the point. It's not against the law to take that. But if it's leaning against your garage, you can't take that bike because now that's your personal property. You see, so values are cultural. And that's what we're trying to emphasize here. Another one, very simplistic one. If you find a quarter on the sidewalk, you'll pick it up. There's nobody around. You might look. There's nobody around. You take the quarter, put it in your pocket, go home. But if you come to my house and that quarter's sitting on my living room table, on my coffee table, and you put it in your pocket, well, you know, that's stealing. It's only 25 cents. But you know that that's probably someone in my house. That's not yours. On the sidewalk, yeah, maybe. But as Rose and I discussed this, what if you find a wallet on the sidewalk?
Because really, that's just a bunch of quarters.
Right. It's just a bunch of quarters.
It's just a bunch of quarters to find a wallet. But we know that it's not.
Right. And so we have a value system that's cultural, but within our cultural value system, we now place value, and we have to determine what is maybe an absolute eternal value as opposed to a cultural value. If I find a wallet with $500 in it and no ID, what do I do with that? Well, I turn it into the police department and hope that someone will come to there and say, I lost my wallet, did anybody turn it in? I won't take that. But a quarter or a penny, nobody thinks second about it. So you see, moral values are cultural to a point, but then we come to that place where we have to say which one is not moral or not cultural anymore, but it has eternal value, eternal moral consequences. And this is where we want to have some more discussion. What moral values transcend culture? Any thoughts?
The first one that comes to mind is the sanctity of life.
Sanctity of life, absolutely.
And which would be why our hearts are broken by the epidemic of abortion.
Right.
And that they're also broken by people who are not valued based on skin color or any other thing that our culture puts on it. I mean, anyways, our hearts should be broken when people are not treated like image bearers, right to the point where we no longer value the elderly, to the point where people want to make it possible for them to choose their own time and their way out. So, scripturally, Jesus tells us everyone matters.
Yeah, and that's where I would have gone, is life. There is just something sacred about life. And it's interesting that what Rosemary just said about the elderly and maybe you want to take their life, or now, and I think it's Germany, you can commit suicide if you want to, any age you want. If you don't want to live anymore, you don't have to live anymore. And the problem is not with that situation. The problem is, how did you get to there?
Right.
Because for centuries, for millennia, value has been placed on human beings. But naturalism coming in the 1800s, leading to nihilism, and leading to the worldview that pretty much dominates America, which is more deism than anything. But deism is really just a naturalistic worldview with a little tinge of spirituality in there. So it's still just very much naturalism. You have no value because you're just an accident. You're just a product of evolution, and therefore you have no purpose or meaning, and therefore do whatever you want.
Right.
This is your only life.
Why would I get in your way?
Right. And that's part of the breakdown of naturalism, is that there is no purpose or meaning, therefore you are not purposeful and you have no meaning. Now, of course, we don't believe that, but the world around us tells us that's the way it is. What moral values are relative to one's culture? What moral values transcend culture? And then how do we as believers in Jesus Christ discern the difference between the cultural and Christian moral values? And that's our Sunday school is not just to give you worldviews, but how do we interact and how do we make decisions and distinctions in our world dealing with these worldviews? And then how does it affect the way I think about my own worldview? I'm a Christian who lives in the 21st century. How do I look at my world? And I need to evaluate that because it will depend on how I treat Rosemary. It would depend on how I treat the person I've never met before as he's walking down the sidewalk. It will depend on how I treat someone suffering from a sickness. And right now we know lots of people who are. Right now in Italy, 700 people a day are dying from coronavirus. That's staggering when you think about it. Not 700 total. 700 died yesterday, well, 758 I believe it was, and 700 something else died the day before that. This is really changing people's lives, families. It's breaking up cultures, it's breaking up people. We can't meet in church anymore. So you see, how I look at my moral value system really is important because it affects everything that I do and think and feel. So I hope that left you with just stuff to wrestle with. And we'll continue this discussion because even though we're getting into existentialism next week, what we're actually going to do is we're going to see how this stuff works itself out. How do you find meaning in a meaningless world as a nihilist? At the same time, we're left with the same questions. And so we'll be dealing with a lot of those same questions next week. So I hope you join us in our Zoom meeting next Sunday at 9:30. My email is up there, dave@edgertonteencenter.com. I need you to email me your email address because I must invite you to the Zoom class. So you need to have my email so you can email me your email. I'll send you a link, and I will probably do this around Wednesday or Thursday, just so you're not waiting for it right away. Maybe even as late as Friday, but we'll make sure you get hooked up well before Sunday, and we'll be able to test it out. Again, the link to Zoom will allow us to both discuss and ask questions. And so Rosemary and I were doing some banter right now, but we'll let you be able to do that face-to-face. And I'll see you, and you can make your comments. You can text in. There's even a box if you just want to text and you don't want to actually say anything. You can do that. We can read that on the bottom of the screen, and we can share that. And the nice thing about Zoom is that you may have a hard time hearing in Sunday school class, but the nice thing about Zoom is you can hear, you can see,
Yes.
and you can text. And so we can read it, we can write it, and we can rephrase it, and you can say, what was that? I didn't hear that. And so I think it would be a great interactive way to actually have Sunday school.
It's going to be great.
So I must invite you to join our Zoom meeting. Of course, I've repeated that many times because I don't want you to miss it. So please send me your email. I'll send you mine. I'll send you the link. And during this week, I'll send you the link so that we all are on the same page well before Sunday morning. Again, if you're in the high school class, if you're a parent, you want your high school students to be back involved in Sunday school, please email Tony. Her email is the exact same as mine. It's just her name instead of my name. Tony@edgertonteencenter.com. Mine is Dave@edgertonteencenter.com. So email her, and she'll invite you to her Zoom class.
I just realized that by being up here with you today, that people are probably out there who confuse Tony and I all the time. And now you will know that I am not Tony. And when you see Tony, you will know that she's not Rosemary. This is great.
Yes.
This is great.
In case you don't know, this is my sister-in-law. It's Tony's sister, Rosemary.
Hence
she-
the confusion, yes.
And the reason we're co-teaching is she's going to be teaching the fall in the class, which I hope you will at least enjoy and look and check out. And I hope we're not still doing it online. I hope we're face-to-face by that time. But if not, it's a good way to get introduced to all the Sunday school teachers. Now, if you need help again, though, please call me. I mean, email me. And Carol Wagner called me last night on the phone, and we talked her through, and we got her set up on Zoom for next week.
Yay.
And so we want you set up. We want you ready for when that we come, because I want to hear from you, because the discussion part is my favorite part of Sunday school. It's where we learn together. It's where we explore together and grow together.
It's energizing.
It
Isn't
is.
It is. Honestly, teaching the class together has been so fun for me because of our prep time. When we get to discuss this and knowing that doing this on Zoom actually will be almost a little more like our prep time.
Right. It will.
With everyone else involved. And I'm telling you, there's just nothing like working on this stuff together.
Amen.
That will light you up, and carry you through to the next time we get to do it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, because it's actually hard to live stream because there's nobody there. We know you might be there, but it's nice to have Rosemary here because at least there's someone we can talk to. But in Zoom, I will see you, and we will really be together. It's real time. It's a real class. And so our Worldview Sunday School will be next week, starting at 9:30. The high school Sunday school class at 9:30 as well. And our emails are on the board right now. So please write those down and save them. Contact me. And again, Pastor Bob will be right here doing the live stream Sunday school at 9:30. And then prayer, of course, is 8:30. And I believe Kent's doing that on Zoom. And so some of you may already be hooked up on Zoom, which is phenomenal. I'll just send you the link, and you'll just click on it. We'll be in a class together. So it'll be a fantastic opportunity for us to explore God's Word and grow together. Amen.
Amen. And then next at 10:30, we get to worship together.
Yes. And, church service at 10:30. All right, thank you. That's our Sunday school.
Yeah.